The story begins on this bloody battlefield. Many warriors fell to the death of the brave. The only one who survived was this man, who is also our main character. All his comrades and friends died in this intense battle. He took another look around the neighborhood and made sure that this place would become their huge cemetery. While he was still trying to breathe, he heard someone's voice. Then our main character saw that this voice was coming from their worst enemy. He never expected that this monster was still alive. This creature with many wings was called a Gaia. It was one of the giants who brought misfortune to this place. These giants materialized in this realm just 20 days ago. Because of this short period of time, they tore apart the destruction. For no reason. People didn't know the reasons for this, but they still tried their best to stop them. Ronan was furious about the creature. He blamed him for the demise of the empire. And then he told him that he would not last long alive. He would soon return to the side from which he came. But this man was lying, saying that the other two giants were also dead. The second giant was defeated by the fire-breathing red dragon. His breath burned him. As for the latter, it was sealed by an old man named Larry. Our hero smiled because he wanted these giants to be more scared fighting humanity, but his lies didn't work. These giants have the ability to share their feelings with each other, and Agaya informed our hero that this was not really a one-sided battle, and those who fought these other creatures were destroyed along with them. It also meant that all the strong people capable of protecting this world had disappeared. But Ronan denied this claim because he was still alive. He could still fight them, but this giant already knew the severity of the damage this man had sustained. He also knew that he was nearing his end, and Agaya also added that if only our hero had realized his skills earlier and put all his efforts into training, then he would have become more of an obstacle to their goal. But now, it's too late because our hero knew that he had lived a bad life, and our hero just needed this giant to just keep quiet. But Agaya still praised the man for his achievements. He told Ronan that he should be more proud, but all his efforts would only be in vain and useless, as this world would meet its end anyway. This giant declared that they would soon be swallowed up by starlight. But Agaya's speech was abruptly interrupted when our hero decisively pierced through his head. The force of his blow was enough to chop off the head of this colossal creature. And this guy still had that cold look in his eyes. He knew there was nothing he could do about what had already happened. Then Ronan's adrenaline level disappeared, and he felt that his body was damaged, and right now he could barely stand on his feet. He also remembered the time when he first met his comrades. This guy with the eye mark was the first one to approach him. Then the other guys followed him. They were all glad to see him and invited him to join their group. These guys have been in many battles together, but right now they're all gone. Ronan wondered why they all went to this place, even though they knew it was too dangerous. He was still furious because he knew that they all did it because of their pride. But it was a stupid thing to do. But now, it was too late. The only thing that occupied his mind right now was the mystery that he was the only one who could defeat these creatures. These giants could block the Empire's strongest swordsmanship, but not his sword. Ronan regrets that he did not know about this. He used to think that many people could survive, and the guy bows his head, feeling defeated, but then he heard some familiar voice. He quickly moved, as this voice seemed familiar to him, and it was then that our hero learned that someone had survived this attack. He saw the woman who was at the boulder, and she also looked so, especially without one arm, and our guy was happy because he saw that his commander-in-chief was still alive. This lady was a commander-in-chief named Audishan. She was the main one in this task of defeating the giant. Ronan also teased his commander for looking like that. But she retorted that he didn't look very good either. And it was here that we also learned that our hero's name is Ronan. Then Commander-in-Chief Audishan asked Ronan if a guy who had died. Our hero said that he was the one who killed the giant, and cut off his head. She was glad of the news. She also thanked Ronan for doing his best. Ronan hadn't expected to see his commander so vulnerable. Then he changed his mood by asking his commander for a request. He told her that he wanted all the bodies on this battlefield to be properly buried. After all, usually in a war like this, they just leave here, or they are burned. But Audishan told him she wasn't sure if she could do it because she wasn't in the best shape herself, and she thought Ronan was more than capable of doing that. But unfortunately, this thought turned out to be wrong, as Ronan suddenly coughed violently. And he said that it looked like he himself could die at any moment. He knew about his demise, because he knew there was nothing he could do about it now. Audishan then asked what he would do if he wanted to survive. Ronan tried to think, but only one thing came to mind. He admitted that he wants to enter the academy. This happened because that giant told him that he was not developing his abilities. And as for the most important part, it was his late sister's wish. She really wanted him to study at the academy, but it didn't really matter, since he thought he would be reunited with her in heaven now. Audishan tried to cheer him up as she was sure that the search party would already arrive to rescue them. But Ronan told her that it was impossible and just useless. And while they were waiting for their death, a bright light soared from above. This quickly alerted these two. They wondered why the storm suddenly stopped, but it was followed by a strong pressure that was felt everywhere. Ronan was trying to figure out what was going on until he saw something above the sky. It was a giant with 8 wings. But this was not the only giant. There were many more giants with him. And they looked like those creatures that almost destroyed humanity. And right now, they broke out here with all their might. Ronan stood up and wondered where these creatures came from. And Audishan's hope was shattered, because she thought that these first 3 giants were the end of the world. But it wasn't like that. This lady realized that she was not capable of saving the world, even if it was the 3rd time. Now she was confused, and she didn't know what to do. But Ronan's words brought her back to reality. This guy asked his commander to use her telekinesis, because his sword would not be able to reach these giants. Audishan was shocked. And she can't believe that her subordinate is still thinking about fighting these creatures. Even despite their overwhelming numbers, Ronan then pulled out his sword. And he swore that he would still do everything possible to drive these creatures away. And Audishan can't figure out why this guy still won't give up. And Ronan's attitude has given her a little bit of hope. She thought Ronan was the key to defeating these creatures. Then Audishan caught his attention, and when Ronan turned his head towards his commander, she told him to shut up, and then kissed him sharply. And Ronan didn't understand what was going on. He never expected something like this to happen. The commander-in-chief released a blue ball from her mouth, and handed it to Ronan. This guy didn't know what he was for, and Audishan leaned closer and whispered something in his ear. He tried to ask a few more questions. But the lady continued to speak in a whisper. When she finished, Ronan screamed and asked her, "What the hell did she just do right now?" But his expression changed when he heard her last request. That if they ever meet again, she wants him to tell her never to do stupid things and stay herself. And be a dressmaker. It was the last request that made our hero freeze in place, but the giants behind him started coming up with something. Besides, this was the first time he had seen such a sweet smile on his commander-in-chief's face. Then, a bright blinding light appeared, which rushed towards the two of them. And this spell hit them right on target. The only thing left after that was the blue ball that Audishan handed to Ronan. After that, our hero was able to open his eyes again, but right now, his surroundings were much more unusual. The sky was blue, and he wasn't surrounded by dead bodies. Ronan was still looking for his commander, but she was nowhere to be seen. And right in front of him stretched these peaceful fields. He also saw these children playing along this river. Then he realized what had happened. This place was called Nimbutan, and it was his hometown. It also officially marked the first day of his regression. Ronan still has a headache from all this information. He thought that the commander's words were really true, because right before the giants attacked them, this madam kissed him. It seems that she handed Ronan a blue ball. And Audishan said that this ball is able to turn back time. She also told him about her past life. Before she received this ball, she was just an ordinary seamstress, but the power of the ball allowed her to return to the past again, and that's when she became the commander of the empire. This ball allows only 4 regressions, and Audishan has already used it 3 times, and she gave this ball to Ronan so that he could use the 4th chance. She believed that the power that could destroy giants was in the hands of our hero, and he was the key to stopping the destruction of the world. This lady also whispered that this chance would give him more time to hone his abilities, as well as fulfill his dream of entering the academy. The great commander Audishan also told him which academy he should go to, and it was Filian Academy. This place was full of people who could help him become stronger, and as mentioned some time ago, this lady asked Ronan for something. She wanted him to remind her to follow her dream of becoming a tailor. Going back to the present time, this guy was still confused. He thought it was just a dream, so I tried to wake up, and if all this was real, then he didn't know what to do. But so far, he's been trying to convince himself of the current situation. He remembered something important, and then he picked up the stick that was lying next to him. Our hero quickly ran home. Because at that time, his sister was still alive and well. Making his way through the crowd, Ronan was too excited because he would see his sister. He even had a smile on his face. But when he rushed downstairs, he noticed something and stopped. He met a group of guys who were bullying someone. The body of the unfortunate guy was suspended in an inverted position. Our hero sighed because he was familiar with these guys. I thought these things never changed. Even in the past, he was about to continue on his way, but something caught his attention. He saw that the child was being hung not by a rope, but by magic. Ronan looked around for someone to use magic with. He knows that magic abilities were considered very rare, as they were too useful on the battlefield. It was then that he saw this man with red hair. It was this guy who used magic. The red-haired guy wondered how long he would need to maintain his magic. After all, if this continues, and something bad happens to this child. This guy begged and begged other guys to let him go. He told them that he really didn't have any money. He also told them that his mother's medicine for this month was too expensive. This guy with golden hair, who in the process was the leader of this group, told him that he just didn't give a damn about this boy's mother. Then he hit this guy and told him that if he really wanted to be a decent son, then he should have earned more money this month. The other guys were just laughing and watching him. Then this bully turned his attention to the guy who uses magic. He told him that since this boy was not coming to his senses, he should be lifted to the top of the tree, and the red-haired guy did not want to do this, but this bandit forced him. This ginger had no choice, because if he didn't follow his words, he would be the one who would end up like this poor boy. This guy even intimidated a red-haired guy who could use magic, and therefore, of course, he was very afraid to refuse him. As it turned out, his name is Assel, and somehow it seems to me that this is not a guy, but a girl. Then he thought about how he ended up in such a situation, and it all started with the fact that he wanted to show everyone that he was good at magic. He wanted to refuse him, but his hands were shaking so much that it was very difficult, but still he had to overcome his fear and refuse this idiot. That moment, he was hit with a stick. And that, of course, was Ronan. He told Assel to stop doing magic. And since Assel lost his concentration, the poor boy has fallen. And the bully was furious. He was about to turn his attention to this ginger. But someone stopped him. Ronan told him not to pay attention to the bully and just talk to him. Ronan asked Assel where he learned telekinesis. Ginger said that he studied from a grimoire that he bought from a merchant. And Ronan was amazed because that's how he learned from some cheap grimoire. Then he thought that he needed to learn more about this ability, as it would really help him defeat the giants in the future. But his thoughts were interrupted when he heard a familiar sound. Ronan saw that this guy had just pulled out his sword. This guy was too angry because he continued to be ignored. Then this bully rushed towards our hero. But he did not feel threatened towards the blonde man who used a real sword. He even wondered where this guy got such a long sword, and he also noticed how bad his stance was. But his strength made up for this disadvantage. But it still wasn't enough, as Ronan easily dodged his attempt. Ronan knew that even if he was young now, his fighting sense, which he had developed in his previous life, had not gone away. The blonde man told Ronan that he was very lucky, otherwise he wanted to beat him so that he couldn't even lift a spoon. So he compromised and told Ronan to get down on his knees and beg for mercy. All these taunts were funny, so to speak, until this idiot touched his sister. He said he would treat her well if our hero died today. But our hero had neither the time nor the patience to listen to all this. Next, he quickly used the wooden stick he had and hit the bully. And then, from a quick and precise blow, blood began to flow, and now this guy's ear was flying to fertilize the ground. You know, there's humus. That's it. In short, it took him a few more seconds to realize what had just happened. He let go of his long sword and started screaming in pain, and the other guys who were with him were scared too. Ronan then approached this bully. Our hero still had a serious expression on his face. It was at this moment that this bully realized that he had ruined everything. The one who won this fight was obvious in the eyes of these hooligans. They were going to help their leader, but they were too scared to approach him because our hero could easily cut off their ears with this wooden stick. Then, he turned to these other guys. He told them that they needed to run right now if they didn't want to end up like their leader. But before they could escape, our hero ordered them to leave all the money they had stolen from the poor boy. Yes, these guys knew that they had no chance of defeating Ronan, so they quickly complied. And a few minutes later, this boy got his money back. This poor boy told our hero that this amount of money was much more than the one that these idiots stole from him. But he was told that he could keep it all for himself, since Ronan really didn't need it anymore. As a result, this boy thanked our hero from the bottom of his heart, and while they were talking, Asel just stood next to them. Asel apologized to the poor boy. He told him that he was just too scared to disobey Han's orders. Asel continued to apologize, and this left the poor boy speechless. Then, this poor boy said that he had already known about Asel's situation from the very beginning. He smiled and told this guy that it wasn't really his fault, but he appreciated his apology. And after that, the poor boy said goodbye to Ronan and Asel. Now, these two are alone. Our hero looked at Asel for a moment. He thinks this guy is not so bad. After that, Ronan started talking about how he needed to talk to him. He told Asel that they should meet here in 4 days. Asel tried to ask a few more questions, but he didn't answer them. And before he left, Ronan said that if Asel didn't come, he'd be screwed. After a while, our hero appeared in front of his house. He even brought some flowers for his sister. He remembered that she liked these flowers, but since he was too ashamed, he was about to throw them away. Fortunately, his sister noticed his presence and opened the door. Her voice stunned our hero. He didn't know what to do next. When his sister died in his previous life, he wondered what he would do if he ever met her again. It was one of the things he regretted in his past life. But right now, his situation was much more different. He had been given another chance. And now his sister was standing in front of him, with her bright and sweet smile. His sister was just as glad that her brother had returned early today. Then Ronan told his sister that he was back, and God, those were the only words that came to his mind. After that, his sister immediately prepared a meal for him. She also teased her brother because she didn't think about when she would receive flowers from Ronan. This girl's name was Iril. Iril was obviously happy to receive such a simple gift from our hero. Ronan then asked his sister how old she would turn this year. He knew that she was already 22 years old, but he needed to request this information because he was interested in learning about the current timeline of this world. Our hero now believes that he now has 10 years left before these giants invade their world. Then Iril went over to Ronan and checked his temperature. She wondered why her brother was acting a little weird today, but this was the same Iril that our hero remembers. She was bright, kind, and responsive. He wanted this moment to last forever. The thought made Ronan remember what he needed to do. He then informed her that he had something to tell her, and his serious expression caught her off guard. Our hero told his sister that he plans to enter the academy. Iril was not immediately able to comprehend this information, but as soon as she realized it, she was shocked. She was really glad to hear it from her brother, and after that, Iril quickly ran away somewhere deep into their house. She began to throw things around in search of something that she had prepared for this day. Iril brought a huge pot. Ronan looked inside the pot, and it was a gift for her brother. The pot was full of coins, and it was more than enough to send her brother to the academy. She kept it a secret to surprise Ronan, and this guy didn't expect such a gesture from his sister. But then he told her that he appreciated the gesture. But that amount of money was still not enough. Then our hero called the name of the academy he would like to enter, and it was the Phylline Imperial School. Upon hearing this, Iris made a confused expression, and then she screamed at the top of her voice when she realized what her brother meant. Phylline Academy was considered the best leading educational institution in the Empire. It employed the most distinguished professors from all over the world. And it also received huge imperial funding. It was also known as the Factory of Heroes. And the great commander Audishan received higher education here. It was also here that Swordmaster Shula Fong studied, and even the worst of the bandits, the Winter Witch, and others were educated here. Our hero knew that all these people had done a great job in the fight against the giants, and this place was even recommended by Audishan herself. But the only problem with this academy was that it was known for its high admission standards and insane cost, but all this did not prevent our hero from trying to enter this academy, especially when his sister was rooting for him all this time. This thought gave him even more determination to show her that he could pass the exam and enter this academy. But before he could do all this, our hero saw someone on his way. He never expected this guy to be here. It was Assel, but for some reason our hero called him Muscle. This red-haired guy came here because of the terrible threat of our hero, but that's not what Ronan really meant at all. But since Assel was here, Ronan told him that they would have a lot to do today, but first he wanted to test him a little, and Assel was shocked because he did not expect Ronan to test him. Then Ronan told Assel to point his telekinesis at him, and our boy wanted to be lifted as high as possible. However, Assel began to say that doing such a thing was very dangerous, but Ronan insisted that he was confident in his safety. With these words, Assel began to cast his spell. The spell he used was called Invisible Hand, which was aimed at our hero. Ronan was shocked, as he actually felt the magic on his body. His legs started to rise, and after a few seconds, Ronan was too excited because he had really climbed high. This feeling was similar to the feeling he had when fighting the giant Agayat. Although he still lacked height and stability, telekinesis allowed our hero to fight on equal terms with these giants, and along with his mysterious ability, it was the only thing he needed. Ronan smiled because it was nice to meet someone so early who could help him on his journey. Assel had just become the most important thing he needed in the battle against the giants. And after a few more seconds, it was already difficult for Assel to keep control of himself, but our hero told him to hold him a little longer because he still wanted to check something. Ronan took out his weapon, then he suddenly waved it in the air. And Assel was startled by what he saw. He realized that our hero had just hit his mana and stripped him of his skill. As soon as he landed, Assel asked him about the trick he had done. It was his first time seeing someone reduce the amount of mana, but there were no answers to his questions, because Ronan didn't know either why this phenomenon is happening. Our hero thought that his mysterious ability was also one of his assignments, and he also needed to find out the truth about it. At the moment, his hypothesis was that this sword could cut mana, but he didn't need to rush to figure out this issue because he still needed to focus on something more important. After this quick test, Ronan informed Assel that he had passed it. And then he gave Assel the extra bag he had. Our hero told him that they needed to do something. Do it before the moon disappears. This thing was so important that it could be considered as the very first page of Ronan's biography. Then, the two continued their journey. Assel was also informed and planned to enroll in Filion Academy. He was trying to confirm if what he had heard was true, because only the elite of the Empire are admitted to this academy. Our hero got angry because Assel kept asking the same questions. He asked Assel, "Don't you want to go to this academy?" And Assel said that it's not that he doesn't want to, but that he has no talent and can't do anything. On top of that, he said he was a coward and shy. Ronan then asked Assel, "Do you really want to live like this?" And this question made Assel suddenly realize it. He thought that he was really wasting his talent, but Ronan still said that he had a lot of moronic sides. They say he is cowardly and shy, as well as a cry-baby and a loser, who is ready to cry for any little thing. But still, there's nothing wrong with that, because he can fix it right now. Ronan also reminded Assel that the past cannot be changed, and you will regret it as much as I do. After all, his past life was full of regrets. Then he asked Assel, "Well, how did you change your mind?" And Assel couldn't believe that Ronan would be so worried about someone like him. But since he didn't answer any of Ronan's questions, our hero set off again. It was then that Assel told him that he wanted to change and would go with him to Filion Academy. Our hero turned around and said that this was the first time he had behaved courageously. But as it turned out, judging by the look on his face, Ronan had planned this from the very beginning. Later that evening, their first mission had already begun. Assel was shocked after receiving instructions from Ronan. This was the first obstacle that Assel had to overcome. Our hero put him up against the first opponent he needed to improve his skill. And it was none other than the Moon Goblin. And right now, all these monsters were sleeping. Ronan had such a bright aura around him because he thought it was the best thing for Assel. And he also had such an angry and psychotic face when he said they could start their mission. Moon goblins were one of the types of monsters that usually appear in this area. Most people distinguish them from ordinary goblins by their yellow skin and mutilated bodies. But their real peculiarity is that they love gold and treasures. These goblins often ambush merchants to steal their treasure and goods, and after they take the treasures, they put everything in one place and celebrate the event, and they usually arrange such celebrations on the night of the full moon. And then Assel began to tremble when he realized what their mission was. Ronan said that they were going to steal this treasure tonight. It was quite confusing because it was the first time he had heard about the Moon Goblin festivals. He asked Ronan how he knew this information, but our hero cannot really answer this question. This knowledge came to him from his past life. Then he walked around Assel and told him to use his skill to move all the treasures into their bags, but this Assel told Ronan that it would not be so easy, because he was still afraid to make a mistake and wake up the goblins. And that was exactly what they really should have avoided. Assel tries to ask our hero to think about this plan again, but he was just told that he was just scared. Ronan then began to explain why they needed to do this. They need two things. The first is a lot of gold to afford admission to this academy, since the cost of tuition is simply unrealistic. The second is experience. Money is needed, of course, but experience is much more important. Ronan began to explain that the academy was full of aristocrats who had been undergoing elite training since birth. And if Assel wants to win against these guys, then there is only one way, and that is to gain experience by risking his life. The Moon Goblins were the perfect opponent for them. This mission would give them money and experience. It was like killing two birds with one stone.